What if dozens of murders were never truly investigated, not because the evidence was missing, but because the system refused to believe a pattern could exist? For years, the signs were there, the connections were visible, but no one was allowed to say it out loud. Across the Soviet Union, victims began disappearing near train stations, wooded paths, and industrial outskirts. Many were children, many were young women. Most were alone. Their bodies were later discovered in forests or shallow clearings. The injuries were brutal, the violence was excessive. Yet each case was treated as isolated. Each investigation was handled separately. Information was rarely shared between regions. Officials insisted that serial murder was a Western problem. They believed such crimes could not thrive inside a socialist society. The first known killing occurred in the late 1970s. A young girl was lured away near a railway station. Her body was found hours later in a wooded area. The crime shocked the local community, but it was filed as a singular tragedy. Then it happened again and again. The locations varied, but the method remained disturbingly consistent. Victims were approached in public spaces. They were promised money, companionship, or assistance. They were led away from crowds. Many attacks occurred near railway lines. The trains allowed easy movement between cities. They provided anonymity. They offered escape. For years, the killer moved quietly through this network. He appeared ordinary. He held jobs. He had a family. He blended into crowds without difficulty. There was nothing outwardly remarkable about him, no obvious warning sign, no public suspicion. Meanwhile, the number of victims continued to grow. Investigators began to notice similarities, but connecting cases across jurisdictions required permission, and permission was slow. Files remained in separate offices. Evidence was processed using outdated forensic methods. Blood typing errors complicated identification. In one early investigation, a man was arrested and pressured into confessing. He maintained his innocence. He was later executed. The killings did not stop. By the mid-1980s, the scale of the problem could no longer be ignored. Hundreds of officers were assigned, thousands of individuals were questioned, train stations were monitored, yet the killer remained free. In one instance, he was briefly detained after behaving suspiciously near a railway platform. Witnesses remembered his presence, his name was recorded, but laboratory tests appeared to exclude him. A misunderstanding about blood group evidence led investigators to release him. It was a critical mistake. The murders continued. Victims were found across multiple regions of southern Russia and Ukraine. The geography made coordination difficult. Families searched for answers. Communities grew anxious. Rumors spread quietly, but official statements minimized the threat. Public acknowledgement remained controlled. Finally, in 1990, surveillance teams were placed near major railway hubs. Officers observed individuals who lingered too long. They watched for patterns of approach. One man drew attention. He walked beside a young victim into a wooded area. Officers followed at a distance. Moments later, they intervened. This time, there was no procedural error. This time, the evidence aligned. Under interrogation, the man began to confess, not to one crime, not to two, but to dozens. The number shocked even experienced investigators. He described locations, he described methods, he described victims who had never been publicly linked. The scale of failure became undeniable. The trial exposed more than brutality. It revealed institutional weakness. It showed how ideology can interfere with investigation. It demonstrated the cost of denial. By the time the case concluded, the Soviet Union itself was collapsing. The political system that had resisted the idea of a serial killer was dissolving. In 1994, the man was executed. But the execution did not close every question. How many early warnings were dismissed? How many lives might have been saved if agencies had shared information sooner? How many confessions were forced while the real offender remained free? The evidence had existed. The pattern had formed.
The violence had repeated. What failed was recognition. The story is not only about one individual, it is about the environment that allowed him to continue. It is about bureaucracy. It is about the danger of believing that certain crimes cannot happen here. The train lines still run, the forests remain quiet, the platforms are filled with travelers. But for more than a decade, movement meant opportunity. Silence meant safety for the wrong person. The victims were not invisible, they were overlooked. And the pattern was not hidden, it was denied. Sometimes the most disturbing crimes are not prolonged by brilliance. They are prolonged by disbelief.